think you can officially call this a crisis at this point because every time you think that City are gonna kick on and get back into winning ways, produce the form that we're used to seeing from a Pep Guardiola side, they just falter. They just end up back at their base level, which is what we saw Saturday afternoon against Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park. Winning against Nottingham Forest midweek, maybe just papered over the cracks a little bit. I didn't think they were amazing that game either, but deserved the win without looking spectacular. But that first win, I guess, was never going to be, you know, flowing football, beautiful, and make you think that the problems never existed. Whereas Kevin De Bruyne has come back into the team. They've got, all right, not a perfect back four, but a back four that's got sort of more of their regular starters in. You can't really find a fault with this team, bar the obvious holding midfield position, which I can't believe he's still going with Gundogan in the six and Bernardo Silva as the supporting player. For me, I just find that mental. And it's no shock that they're losing games and conceding the amount of chances that they are. But he's starting to crack Pep, and this team is so poor. And usually you'd say, all right, going away to Palace 2-2, they can just frustrate you. They can just wind you up and they can nick a point. 2-2 was a fair result. Like Palace looked as in the game as Man City, and that's the worrying thing is teams aren't just getting results against City. They're looking like they deserve it. They're looking like it's not just a complete smash and grab. Pep is losing the absolute plot. His interview after the game about Rico Lewis's red card, uh, trying to square up to the bloke with the camera, which admittedly I find people that run up to people in the streets with cameras worthy of a punch in the face anyway, but that's another story. The hurting himself comment from Feyenoord a couple of weeks ago is madness. I also think the response to the Rico Lewis red card's been a bit over the top because in real time I thought it was a red. On a replay, you see it, and I still thought it was a foul, but I didn't think it was maybe worthy of a second yellow. But I think the response to it's been a bit silly and over the top. In real time, it looked bad, and they can't overturn red second yellow cards through VAR or yellow cards in general through VAR. So you go with the referee's on-field decision. For me, people complain about VAR getting involved too much. For me, that was the perfect time of it not getting involved because I can see why the ref's given that on the field. In real time, I thought it was bad. In real time, it looked bad, helped by the reaction of Chalobah. But regardless, I didn't think it was this monstrous decision that people made it out to be. But anyway, I digest. We'll get back into the video. We'll go over the Man City attacking phase first, because I guess that's the more poignant thing. Man City would line up in their sort of 3-diamond-4-3 shape, with Gundogan at the base of the midfield, Silva, De Bruyne, and Rico Lewis in the attacking areas, with Savinho and Nunes pushing wide and pulling wide, with Haaland as the striker, Walker, Diaz, and Gvardiol as the back three. And Palace, I think, set up to defend it really well. They let him move up the pitch and then would engage. Mateta would typically sit on Ilkay Gundogan, with the midfield four in behind that would be ready to press if the ball went wide. So let's say if Diaz moved it to Kyle Walker, then you'd get Eze pushing up into this area here to engage with Walker. Lerma would shift across, Will Hughes would shift across, and Sarr would come across to go man for man to block the passing lanes into the midfield three. The wing backs would take care of the wide players. There was no obvious way that City could play through, and if they tried to play over to the far centre back, again you'd get Sarr pushing up, Hughes coming across, Lerma and Eze moving into this area here. They could also press in the centre because if there was a case where maybe there was a poor pass to Ruben Diaz or he miscontrolled it, Mateta would then go to jump, or you'd maybe get Will Hughes spying it and pressing past Mateta into this area. Sarr would then cover in, everyone would narrow up and again go man for man on the midfield. So it felt like they had plans for every player in this deeper area getting the ball, and City just couldn't play through really man for man. The only times they got a little bit of joy was just those split second moments when players are transitioning from one man to another. And if they move the ball quick enough, then you could maybe find De Bruyne just on the edge of Lerma or Hughes. We could get on the turn and play through. Didn't do it that much though, so the few times it happened, they managed to save themselves and defend well as a result. But other than that, real slow, laboured passing from the deeper areas. The odd time they did find space in between that Palace midfield, you could get Rico Lewis in this area here, in this sort of right half space. But Chalobah was very keen on engaging into this area, very keen on pressing up if the need and the opportunity was there to win the ball back in these areas. On the left-hand side, it was a little bit different. So whereas Rico Lewis would stay disciplined into his left half space role, Bernardo Silva could come out here, allowing Savinho to move inside. The issue with this is, from a City perspective, Savinho moving inside, he's going to have to contend with Guehi. Well, and Guehi won't engage further up the field like Chalobah will. He's a lot more comfortable defending the half space in behind. He's a lot more athletic. He's ready to use his pace to cover the space in behind. And so he's more than happy to match Savinho 1-for-1. And Silva receiving the ball in these areas gives invitation for Tyrick Mitchell to go and press up in these wing back areas and try and win the ball back as quick as possible. Because again, defensively better, can engage a lot quicker and a lot more aggressively, and so it suits him a lot better. So anyway that City looked to try and play through, they didn't really have a way to outmaneuver Crystal Palace's passing shape. They were very well organised, they were very well coached. They always had a plan to deal with, let's say, just the overloads in certain areas. In the second half, they were getting done a little bit more by Kevin De Bruyne coming into the left back position. Sarr wasn't always willing to go and press fully, and so he was able to play off this side a little bit more. In the first half, he was so close to Haaland, he was basically a non-factor. But second half, he was able to get on the ball, test how fast Sarr and Lerma and maybe Will Hughes and even Mateta were willing to come. Nunez couldn't really come up and engage in this area because of Nunes. Chalobah wouldn't really engage in this area because it was a bit too wide for him to have to move up to and leave too much space in behind himself. That could easily be found with Kevin De Bruyne's range of passing. And they did start moving the ball a little quicker in the second half. Also, Haaland never really showed as an extra option, trying to combat the fact that Crystal Palace would man mark and go man for man on the City midfield in these areas to pull off into an angle to present for the ball. Did it a couple of times, and to be fair, he had success doing it the few times he didn't do it anywhere near as often enough, and as a result, didn't offer an overload when there was an easy option to overload. We know what Haaland is, we know what Haaland isn't, but I just don't think there's anything wrong with being alert to a gap that can open up, because they can open up. And all it takes is that split second, the pass is made, he lays it off to De Bruyne or whoever's closest to him in the proximity, and City are in business, and it didn't happen anywhere near enough. The one play that City could create danger with was Matheus Nunes on that side, and he was directly responsible for the first and second goal. And the reason he could find a bit of success is the relationship between Chalobah and Munoz wasn't that key. With Chalobah being so aggressive in these areas and pressing up, he'd do so in positions where it maybe wasn't appropriate, and so he would leave a big enough gap in between him, Lacroix and Munoz at right wing back, where players could move into. We saw Rico Lewis do it for the second goal, where Chalobah just made a silly decision to press up. He was able to pull off into that space created, receive the pass, and get a shot away, and so he could get caught there. Also, Rico Lewis, the odd time he did find himself in a left back position, this would be the trigger for Munoz to go and press. And Chalobah, again, was too concerned with pressing vertically, not concerned enough with pressing the space horizontally. So this did give invitation for City to spread the play into the wide areas where Nunes could get on the ball, look for a half space run from De Bruyne or Rico Lewis that was found a lot more in the second half than it was the first, which we know has been a staple of Pep Guardiola teams for years. Or get a crossway, which he did for the first goal, found Haaland with a really good ball, and was a threat all game in that sense. Munoz was too high up. He had to sprint to get back, and he did get back quickly a few times. He's got a great burst of pace on him. Chalobah didn't get across quick enough to stop the crosses coming in and stop the danger from happening, while as well protecting any potential half-space runs. So that was the only little weakness in this Palace team. But still come away with a point and thoroughly deserved. And with the aggression and with the physicality advantage they had over Manchester City in these areas, if I just move players back into position a little bit, it felt like when Palace went to press, they won every duel against the likes of Gundogan. If Lerma or Hughes went up to press, it felt like they won every single 50-50 between them. Rico Lewis got the ball stolen off him tons of times, not just from Will Hughes or Lerma, but Chalobah pressing up in these areas. Silva and De Bruyne, again, it just felt like every time a challenge was made by a Palace player, they could win. And they could look to engage in the counter-attack with the pace they have in this team, with Sarr, Eze, Mateta either getting in behind or looking for the ball short to get on it and play forward and find those runners. There was such a transitional threat, Crystal Palace, made so much easier by City's lack of physicality and holding on to the ball when pressed. I just thought I'd cover that because it's worth going on, but we're going to go over the Crystal Palace attacking phase in further detail now. The City would try and press high man to man, but their high press was maybe the most disorganised I've ever seen, and one of the poorest implemented from them I've ever seen. Palace would line up in a sort of 2-4-4. Henderson playing his part in between the centre backs. Gahey would move out to a sort of left back, left centre back position. Lacroix alongside in the centre. Chalobah moving up into a right centre back, right back position. Mitchell would push a little bit higher up into a more orthodox left back position. Munoz would go full on right winger, high up the field, providing the width on the right hand side. Eze and Sarr would be the 2 10s alongside Mateta, with Lerma and Hughes narrowing up, looking looking for the ball centrally. City would press 4-4-2, 4-2-4. And again, so disorganised. So in these areas, especially if Mitchell dropped in a little bit deeper, they were completely outnumbered 3-4-7. I had to do some quick maths there against 4. Now, I said yesterday when I was discussing Liverpool that not having a 1+ in your pressing stages isn't the worst thing in the world as long as you can combat that with energy and speed in the press. City do not have either of those two things. It was laboured, it was poor, and to be fair, I actually felt a little bit bad for Kevin De Bruyne because I felt like he was trying to orchestrate positions and orchestrate triggers of when players should go, who's coming up with him, who's tucking in. You could see a lot of hand gestures. It clearly wasn't sinking into his teammates because it didn't really feel like it was going through. And the only time they had a little bit of success is when they could box them over to one side. Savinho going over to Mitchell if Gahey got the ball, Haaland coming up to Gahey, De Bruyne covering through Nunes, moving into to get the option of Hughes and Lacroix on this side. He could maybe press onto Henderson if the ball went to him. So they could box him in that way. When Palace would get the ball in the centre of the pitch, however, De Bruyne and Haaland consistently found themselves in this weird in-between centre-backs and the midfielders. Savinho and Nunes in between full-backs and the centre midfielders. And as a result, not really getting near either. And the amount of times that Lerma and Hughes found the ball in the centre areas of the pitch and were able to get on it and turn is frightening for City. Had the physicality to hold off the press as well. So when Nunes, when Savinho, when De Bruyne would come around and try and engage, you didn't really get it from De Bruyne because I've said it before, he's not a great presser. He's actually fairly poor with his pressing. Doesn't cut off passing lanes well enough at all. Doesn't engage the player on the ball quick enough for them to worry about it. He's always half in everything he does from a pressing point of view. Occasionally, you'd also get Bernardo Silva trying to come up to try and equal the numbers, moving up from the defensive areas. Can also come up into the left-back position if that pass seems on. And so his job was to cover the centre areas of the pitch to try and make sure that Palace could equal it and press him over to that one side and lock him into an area of the pitch. Again, wasn't strong enough, wasn't physical, didn't show any real intent to win the ball, and Lerma and Hughes were able to get time to turn, play, and get the ball forward. Eze could also drop in to provide that extra option. He was really poor in this game, though. Eze got on the ball a couple times and turned Walker when he would come up to engage from these deeper areas. Real lack of quality, though. His passing at points when he got into really good positions was so poor. It was not a surprise for him to be the first person substituted in this game. And so, again, they could do that and play through the centre areas because of the poor City press and the lack of physicality in the duels when they would go to engage. They could also go long to, well, essentially any of these three. Long to Munoz, who could have the physical advantage over Rico Lewis. I think that speaks for itself. Long to Mateta, who's fantastic with his physicality and his strength and his back-to-goal play, could hold off Diaz, especially hold off Gvardiol in these areas, who has struggled so much defensively in recent weeks. And also with Eze moving forward, dragging Kyle Walker up, Mateta could spin off this area and look for the ball in the channel to try and contend with Diaz, beat Walker, and Walker would try and back-press him fairly easily as well. So he was a constant threat in this side. Was Mateta, just that physical presence the City struggled to deal with. One player that was getting a lot of success from the long option, surprisingly, is Maili Sarr, who would come up to be tracked by Gundogan, and he won every duel on the ground. He was able to outmuscle him, get on the turn and play forward. Aerially, he could win all his battles against him. Gundogan couldn't lay a glove on him. And I think it was absolutely deliberate that he was kept closer to Mateta than Eze was, just so that when he won those duels against Gundogan, which he did every time, he could quickly combine with Mateta and they could launch their attacks. They could then attack and get him behind that City back four quicker. Gundogan just couldn't get near him, just struggled all game with him. And then the runs that the likes of Lerma, Hughes, Eze, Mitchell could make off of their runners from the midfield sense was so easy. They just couldn't get near him. De Bruyne maybe coming in, Silva, Savinho dropping. Palace players were past them far too easily and far too quickly. And the space that would sometimes be created between the back four and the midfield four with Palace players rushing in on them, they had to drop off quick. And as I say, just really struggled to contend the breakaway pace with the athleticism that Palace showed and getting from back to front quick. City just do not have the legs in the midfield to contend with it. It forces the back four deeper. It gives players like Eze more time and space on the ball. And as I say, better passing from Eze. Palace could have had a couple more chances and unlocked City. He didn't show the quality that we all know he has as much in this game. And when Palace did push City back, this is what it looked like. Also, I've just realised I've left Munoz's number on 2. I swear to God, I'll get through one of these videos without making a mistake on the numbering. When Palace would attack, they'd attack as you'd expect with the 3-box-4-3. Nunez would move back into a left wing-back position to try and combat the numbers of the Palace attacking 5, with Munoz, the number 12, in the high and wide position. It would leave that Man City midfield a little bit outnumbered against the box. The idea would be Haaland and De Bruyne would drop into the 2 deeper players, but Palace did what City didn't in their attacking shape, and Gahey would move high up in these positions. You get Chalobah doing the same on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side rather, to offer an overload and to offer an extra option that City didn't really have a plan to deal with, to be honest with you. And again, Savinho coming across could leave space in for Eze, or he could play it down for Tyreek Mitchell to attack Walker one-on-one, who, as we've seen this season from Walker, is not within his skill set anymore. De Bruyne could sometimes drop in to make it a 5-4-1, but again, that would be conceding a lot of space in the deeper areas as Hughes and Lerma could get on the ball and create. Haaland, as I say, just doesn't do his job defensively well enough at all. And again, the lack of legs, they tried to restrict space for Palace to play in, but it didn't work at points, and Palace had so much possession, or maybe not so much, but way more than you'd ever expect them to have against a City team high up in these areas. And as a result, you can't moan about them getting the point. You could argue on a different night they get all 3. Henderson's pulled off a few good saves, so has Ortega. But just the amount of territory that Palace had within the City third. If you're a City fan, is frightening. You can go to Crystal Palace and draw 2-2. They're a team that can suck a punch anyone on their day. They're not winning this title. I've written pet teams off before, but I've never felt more confident in saying it right now. They will not win this title. They're not good enough. They don't have the quality in comparison to the likes of Liverpool, maybe even Arsenal if you want to chuck them in there. Well played, Palace. Fair cracks to them. Important points. They're trying to climb up the table. And Glasner will be very happy with the discipline showed in this team. A few odd moments, but I thought on the whole he can be proud of his team's work on his game plan. But let us know what you think, guys. Like the video if you like it, dislike it if you disliked it. Comment down below and tell me why either way, and subscribe if you want to see more. In a bit.